So, today we're talking about The Dive, which is a new drama thriller out in cinemas this weekend, directed by Maximilian Erlenwein. John is here, my name is Phil, we are Boys on Film. If you love movies, please do subscribe. We've got plenty more reviews on the way in the next couple of weeks. Lots of stuff to get through. But this, Sean, comparisons to something that we saw a few months ago, which was Fall.
Everyone is comparing it to Fall. Hi everyone, look at I'm in 4K today. Look at how, you can see everything, and maybe that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. It is a bit like Fall. It is like 127 hours. It's got that energy to it, and I think people are talking it into that space.
Okay, so we could be talking claustrophobia, we could be talking tension. I mean, Fall, I have to say I had sweaty palms. This, a little bit. It wasn't quite as tense, but anyway, we'll come on to that. I don't want to spoil anything. But it's filmed in Malta. I mean, beautiful surroundings. Amazing landscapes. Have you been to Malta? I'm guessing you have.
Not. You know what? It's really been featuring. A lot of my friends have been through Malta recently, and hey, this is not a travel YouTube, but I've had mixed views about Malta.
Oh, I've been twice, but I went for a working holiday because I was DJing for Malta Pride. I mean, it was upbeat, it was joyous, very warm. It was beautiful, and I stayed in amazing accommodation as well. It was like an old cottage. It was amazing.
That sounds perfect.
So, like I say, it's filmed in Malta. It's about Drew and May, who are sisters, played by Sophie Lowe and Louisa Krause, who was in a film called Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. Did you see that film? So amazing. With Elizabeth Olsen.
Yeah. So, Drew and May are sisters, although actually I thought first that they were lovers.
I know, I did as well.
Did you call it out?
Yeah.
It was ambiguous. So Drew and May go on this what appears to be annual trip to go diving. We get lots of flashbacks throughout the film with their father going diving, free diving, and their experiences together. What we get as a sense of when they go on this dive is that May isn't really into it, and she's carrying some baggage, I think, about their family and their relationship. And Drew is overly excited. She loves these trips. It's very clear she loves spending it with this stuff, but she can really sense that May's not into it at all. And some of that plays out during the story, but I'm not going to spoil that. But really, as you can imagine, with the dive, and us referring it to Fall and 127 hours, something happens. So they go on a dive, and May gets stuck. There is kind of a rockfall in Malta. It falls into the water, and May gets stuck. And that's where the drama begins.
So this is really interesting because you mentioned the father, how the father comes into the storyline, and he doesn't actually play a big part in the film because it's primarily them two, isn't it? I mean, they hold the film together. It's just those two roles. But initially, I didn't think I was going to emotionally connect with Drew and May because there wasn't really much of a backstory. It went straight into the action. You see them pulling up to the location where they're diving, and they leave the car. It's a rented car. And it's pretty much wham bam, straight into the action, isn't it? And that's when obviously the chaos happens, the accident happens pretty much in the first 10 minutes. So there isn't really any room to find out about them as characters. So I thought, okay, so this is going to be a tough watch in some ways because I don't really care so much about the characters because I don't know much about them. But actually, what was clever about the film is that throughout the film, you get flashbacks. So that's where the father comes into it, and the whole storyline with Drew, who's not really into the expedition.
Yeah, I found it interesting in a way. You're right, because the character development happens in real time as you're watching the film. I think what you get is a sense of they are a family unit. You don't see the mum. I think you get a sense of favoritism that the father had between the two girls, and that plays through. What you also get is May, who gets stuck, is actually probably far more safety conscious. So she's the one going, if we're doing this kind of thing, we need these ropes, we need these kind of things. Whereas Drew seems a bit more free and easy, and you find out later that she was a free diver. So they've got although they're both divers, they've got very different energy. And I think that also comes from, and it's rooted in their childhood. And it starts to play out more and more as they become adults.
I think I might have mixed up the sisters' names when I just
spoke. I wasn't going to say anything because that would be rude. May is the one that gets stuck.
The storyline is relatively simple, but actually what is clever about the film is that it does crank up the tension. The tension is there, the claustrophobia is there. It's beautifully shot. And what I loved also about it was that it doesn't all feature underwater, because I think if it had been the whole 90-minute running time underwater, I think that could have been too much. But actually what it does is you see Drew coming out of the water to obviously try and rescue or get help from people that are living nearby. So you get both, and it's very balanced actually. It's not primarily underwater, it's a bit half and half, isn't it? And I think that keeps the attention.
May, as she's stuck, because obviously she's on a tank, she starts to get some kind of like nitrogen oxide poisoning. I'm no scientist. Through that she starts to hallucinate, and actually some of the story and some of the resentment she's feeling comes through weirdly. It's like she's microdosed on like nitrogen oxide, and she's revealing why she feels the way she feels about her sister and the wider construct, which I think is interesting. And then you're right, Drew is out and about like Annika Rice, like running up mountains, like doing all sorts of shit.
Oh my god, that one scene where it's an amazing panning shot and it's all filmed in one shot as well, and you see her running up. It's like a small chapel or church.
Well, you know what that made me think about, and maybe you can flash this on screen. There's that amazing painting by Andrew Wyeth, which is the girl sat in the field with the house on the hill, and as she's running up, I was like, and the way it's framed, I was like, it feels like an Andrew Wyeth painting. That was actually really beautiful. And I was like, oh, I wonder if they've referenced that, or maybe, I don't know, but that's where my brain went to. There are moments that I think do require you to have a bit of creative license with your brain.
And suspend disbelief a little bit as well.
Suspend disbelief ever so slightly, which is... okay, it's meant to be this kind of like fast pace.
Exactly. It's that kind of film, isn't it?
What I did think as it started, and I said this to my husband, was as it starts, the two of them are sat in the car, and I was like, why is it always two women? Like, because when we watch Fall, it's the same thing. It's two women in a car about to climb a big tower. Here it's two women in a car about to go deep diving in a cave in Malta. Is it through the male gaze? Why have they decided that this creates more drama?
That's really interesting, because it is a male director.
Fall had me on the edge of my seat, literally like, I can't deal. I actually can't deal. Like, it was too much. Like, if you talk about cranking up tension, anxiety, sweaty palms, the works, Fall did it in spades. This film, I was like, okay, now she's doing a thing.
I can understand the similarities. I mean, the emotional pull, it did have a similar emotional pull where you're kind of getting to know them and why there's tension, why there's friction, why there's a sadness to the story, because the score is quite melancholic in parts, and it does sweep you along. It does keep you involved with the story. But you're right, I think with Fall, I think I was more on the edge of my seat, definitely. But with this, I was never bored. Elements of it were a bit like, oh my god, I mean, she was fit. I mean, going back to that scene where she runs up to the chapel, it is one shot and you see her running up that really steep hill to get to the top. And Sophie Lowe, she must be fit.
I was like, right, she's just swum out of a cave. She's probably got the bends. She gets the flippers off, gets the tank off, runs up a hill to the car's f***ed, then runs up the Andrew Wyeth hill to a church, then comes back, pushes the car off a cliff, and then gets back in the seat. And I'm like, I'm sorry, girl, but unless you're Superwoman or you're a triathlete, I'm not really buying that she's just like, phew.
I can't wait to do the editing on this. It didn't bother me too much, but it was niggling at the back of my mind. Okay, would a really fit human be able to do all of this in that space of time? No, they probably wouldn't. But you have to kind of roll with it to a certain extent. It didn't ruin the film for me.
How many times can you get the bends until you bend in two? So I was a bit like, it's the bend and snap. Because her sister keeps going, make sure you depressurize because you're going to get the bends. And she's up and down out of that sea like a lift, babe.
I can't wait to find out what your star rating is.
I thought it was alright. Just if you want to fact check me, on IMDb I gave it 6 out of 10, which is 3 stars.
Yeah, that's a solid 3, isn't it?
It's a 3, yeah.
You really dove into that star rating there.
I just wanted a bit of science because there's so much science in this film, you know. I need
You're splashing around.
It's like splashing around, getting the bends. 3 stars.
Here comes the wave of enthusiasm.
I had a bendy view on it and then a wave of enthusiasm. I think it's a pretty solid movie. I enjoyed it. It kept my attention. There's bits that I was a bit like, no girl, and there's bits I was like, yeah girl.
I was going to give it 4 stars because I think it's a well-made film.
Why? What are you talking about? 4 stars!
It's a solid 3. It's a solid 3.
No, that's unfair of me because I've now just torn apart your views of it.
Well, no, because I think it's better than an average film.
Go see it.
If I could give a half star, it would be 3.5. Put it that way.
I think that's a reach. If I could give a half star, I'd give 2.5.
Oh, you're a hard man to please, Sean Vickers.
Hey, listen, I get it. But I just need to be honest about these things, right? You know, I made a promise to myself at the start of the year that I was going to be more honest about these kind of things.
You're a hard marker.
I'm an honest
It's your
marker.
strap line.
Some people may think it's harsh, but it is my strap line, my hard marker. And you know what? It didn't need to take 20 minutes off. I thought it was the right amount of time.
It was an hour and a half. I think that's fine.
Snappy.
Yeah, it was snappy. The effects.
Well, there's a lot of CGI in Fall. A lot of
sound
CGI.
design was better in this.
True.
The music was better in this.
I think the VFX folks in Fall did a really good job, quite frankly.
I think the performances were better in this.
Yeah. I mean, she was acting well through that face mask.
Yeah. She was acting well through that face mask. That's going up on the billboard.
I used to watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy. And what I always used to love about Grey's Anatomy was they'd be in the OR and they'd be doing some kind of like really big 26-hour like cardiothoracic surgery. And all you would have is Sandra Oh, Christina Yang in a mask. And she'd just be like, eye acting.
Amazing.
And that is why Sandra Oh is a star.
Yes.
Because she just used her eyes for 95% of her role in Grey's Anatomy. This lady who has a face mask, she should have gone for like a mentorship with Sandra Oh and been like, you can see that much of my face, but I need to emote. Help me emote.
Lots of emoting in the dive.
Not a motorway. Emote.
Yeah, emoting. So, emoticon. It's called The Dive. It's out in cinemas in UK and Ireland from this Friday, 25th of August. That's another thing as well, because I think it could maybe have benefited from seeing it on big screen, because there are some great widescreen shots.
Think about this. Would the sound have been better in like a Dolby?
Yeah,
maybe.
I think possibly, because we saw it on the small screen. I think maybe that has had an impact.
Maybe. You might get the sense of the sea, the expanse.
Yeah.
Also, there wasn't a lot of fish. I was like, what if a shark turns up and eats her?
Like 10 minutes into the film.
It's actually the Meg 3. And the Meg turns up and eats her, and her sister, having got a gas tank, free dove down 40 meters, just finds her legs under the rock at the end.
Or ruby red slippers.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Or a note that she's written on a rock saying, I always hated you, you were a bitch as a sister.
Or a note on the rock saying, bye!
Yeah. That was my favourite.
Yeah, see ya.
That, I think, gets it to 4.
I'd say 5, actually. Thank you, Sean, as always. If you liked what you saw today, hopefully you did. Us just rambling about underwater adventures.
I think in all of that, though, Phil, there's a lot of common sense.
Yes.
If you're watching this, you're going to come away and go, slightly chaotic and turbulent, but they actually spoke sense.
Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one. If you've enjoyed this, check out the video on the screen now floating around Sean's head.
Subscribe.